Hello everybody, welcome to Toitū Curator's Corner, episode number 19. My name's Sean Brosnan, I'm a curator at Toitū Otago Settlers Museum here in Dunedin, and I began making these little videos about early Dunedin history during the coronavirus lockdown, and now I'm keeping them going just at a slightly less frequent pace. Back in episode 15, I touched on Captain Cargill's various houses in pioneer Dunedin, including the one that was built for him in advance by Kettle's survey party, and which he rejected on arrival as unsuitable and never lived in. It's the one that we have a section of on display at Toitū beside our replica cottage. Well, today we're going to go back and look at the next owner of that house, which was at the corner of Pitt and London Streets, just above the North Dunedin flat. This turned out, as it happened, to be well away from the initial cluster of settlement around the Toitū stream, which is why Captain Cargill rejected it. And it was to remain an isolated habitation. The last lonely house as you left Dunedin, which was effectively to the south of the Octagon, on your way north, perhaps to North East Valley, where quite a few of the early settlers took up land. That was some 2 kilometres away, across a swampy bog covered with flax bushes and crisscrossed with waterways. And this house, its lights twinkling in the blackness, would have been the only wayfaring sign for many travellers as they tried to negotiate that quite difficult terrain in the darkness of night on their way home to the valley. Now, after being rejected by Captain Cargill, the house sat empty for quite a while. It was a veranda cottage with 3 rooms, a shingle roof, wattle and daub construction, quite a bit bigger actually than the average pioneer cottage. And it was the only vacant house of a suitable size that was available when Dr William Purdie arrived in the colony on the Multan in 1849 with his wife and 6 children. So he bought that house and he named it Woodside after all the trees and bush that surrounded it. It was in fact rather an idyllic spot at that time, as Dr Robert Fulton, who owned it later, describes it in detail in his pioneer history of Otago doctors. Mapo trees festooned with clematis, feathery manuka with snow-white blossom, kowhai, later to be covered with golden bells, and fuchsias with purple blooms, amidst whose branches fluttered and carolled ceaselessly the feathered songsters of our bush. Wild pigs abounded amongst the fern and undergrowth of the hills above. The trees were alive with pigeons, kako and tui. Hosts of the smaller birds were seen everywhere. Canaries, thrushes, saddlebacks and crows were as common in the neighbourhood as sparrows and starlings are today. Several good streams of clear water came down through the bush, and altogether one could hardly have chosen a prettier home in any part of the town than did Dr Purdie in settling where he did. Now, such a scene would be quite hard to imagine now as you stand at that busy intersection opposite Knox Church with all of the tightly packed buildings around that area and the steady hum of traffic passing along George Street, or the cars coming down Pitt and London Street and all coming together there. But next time you're stuck at that set of lights, let's face it, they take ages to cycle through, try and imagine yourself back to the primordial beauty of that lonely spot. Now, Dr Purdie was an unusual addition to the pioneer population, not just because he was a medical doctor, but also on account of his age. He was 52, already with 20 years' experience as a doctor behind him back in Scotland. And he had knowledge of the latest technique of using chloroform as an anaesthetic, which he bought and introduced to Dunedin, as well as the use of vaccines. But he'd actually had a pretty rugged experience in coming out to the colony. Getting free berths for himself, his wife and all those children in exchange for acting as the doctor on board the ship must have seemed like a good deal when he signed up to emigrate. But it didn't seem like such a good deal when cholera broke out on board the ship just 10 days out of Glasgow. Now, the plague swept through the steerage passengers to devastating effect. 20 cases among the 120 passengers, with 9 deaths in short order. Imagine what that must have felt like for those families crammed together in those cramped confines of a steerage compartment and watching their companions die one after the other with no idea of what caused the infection or how to stop it. Unsurprisingly, many of them turned on the doctor in their anguish, blaming him, notwithstanding the fact that his own 3-month-old daughter died as well. Dr Fulton records that Purdie, in fact, had to go about the ship armed with a pair of pistols at one point, such was the ill feeling against him. Yet somehow he managed to both control the contagion and then wipe it out, such that by the time the ship reached Dunedin, it was cholera-free. Perhaps, however, a lingering sense of ill feeling might have made the doctor prefer a spot that was isolated and well away from his fellow passengers to begin his colonial life. Purdy actually proved to be a very successful doctor in the colony, building up a large practice pretty quickly. And he was also to play a huge part in the public life of pioneer Dunedin. He became the go-to guy whenever you wanted someone for a committee or some sort of other body, known for the fact that he'd put in the hard work that was required to make it effective. But there was one other attribute of Dr. Purdie that wasn't quite so popular. He was an ardent teetotaler and a strong advocate of temperance, which didn't go down so well among a pioneer population that was notable for its heavy drinking. Fulton tells a story, in fact, about two pioneer Scottish brothers who were working for Purdy, repairing the roof of his house in Pitt Street in a hot January day with the sun beating down. One of them called to the other, "Charlie, do you think the doc would stand us a beer?" His brother called back, "Dunno, perhaps we should ask him." At that moment, the doctor came out of the house. "Lads," he said, "there's a fine little stream down the back of the property there. Why don't you knock off and wet your whistles?" Well, it was indeed delicious, clear, cool water, but it wasn't quite what the Scotties had been anticipating. And as Fulton ends his telling of the anecdote, they said nothing, but they thought a lot. So I hope you enjoyed that little story about pioneer Dunedin, the last lonely house as you left it to the north, and Dr. William Purdie, its notable early inhabitant. And if you did, you might like to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to be notified of future episodes, and until the next one, bye for now.